Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of chapter 3, titled Escape. Now, before I left you, I asked you to infer what you think is going to happen in this chapter. Remember, it's titled Escape. When we infer, we read between the lines. Now what that means is you think about what they're saying, you make a smart guess or prediction of what you think will happen next before they even tell you. Sometimes you find out, sometimes you don't, and you just have to make a smart guess. So before we even start reading today, on a sticky note, a scrap piece of paper, or even in the comment section on this video, please write to me and tell me, I infer that, and tell me, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to write down what I infer that I think is going to happen. All right, I have my inference. I'm not going to show it to you now because that would be cheating. So I hope you wrote something down of what you infer you think is going to happen. Now remember, we're right in the middle of chapter 3. We learned that Fern likes to go to her uncle's house and to sit on the milking stool outside of Wilbur's pen and just watch him with all the other animals. Here we go, let's continue. One afternoon in June, when Wilbur was almost 2 months old, he wandered out into his small yard outside the barn. Fern had not arrived for her usual visit. Wilbur stood in the sun, feeling lonely and bored. "There's never anything to do around here," he thought. He walked slowly to his food trough and sniffed to see if anything had been overlooked at lunch. He found a small strip of potato skin and ate it. His back itched, so he leaned against the fence and he rubbed against the boards. When he tired of this, he walked indoors, climbed to the top of his manure pile, and sat down. He didn't feel like going to sleep. He didn't feel like digging. He was tired of standing still, tired of lying down. "I'm less than 2 months old, and I'm tired of living," he said. He walked out into the yard again. "When I'm out here," he said, "there's no place to go but in. When I'm indoors, there's no place to go but out in the yard." "That's where you're wrong, my friend," said a voice. Wilbur looked through the fence and saw the goose standing there. "You don't have to stay in your dirty little yard," said the goose, who talked rather fast. "One of the boards is loose. Push on it. Push on it, and come on out." "What?" said Wilbur. "Say it slower." At the risk of repeating myself," said the goose, "I suggest that you come on out. It's wonderful out here." "Did you say a board was loose?" That I did," said the goose. Wilbur walked up to the fence and saw that the goose was right. One board was loose. He put his head down, shut his eyes, and pushed. The board gave way. In a minute, he had squeezed through the fence and was standing in the long grass outside his yard. The goose chuckled. "How does it feel to be free?" she asked. "I like it," said Wilbur. "That is, I guess I like it." Actually, Wilbur felt weird to be outside his fence, and with nothing between him and the big world. "Where do you think I'd better go?" Anywhere you like," said the goose. "Go down through the orchard, root up the sod, go down through the garden, dig up the radishes, root up everything, eat grass, look for corn, look for oats, run all over, skip and dance, jump and prance, go down through the orchard and stroll in the woods. The world is a wonderful place when you're young." "I can see that," replied Wilbur. He gave a jump in the air, twirled, ran a few steps, stopped, looked all around, sniffed the smells of the afternoon, and then set off walking down through the orchard. Pausing in the shade of the apple tree, he put his strong snout into the ground and began pushing, digging, and rooting. He felt very happy. He had plowed up quite a piece of ground before anyone noticed him. Mrs. Zuckerman was the first to see him. She saw him from the kitchen window, and she immediately shouted for the men. "Homer!" she cried. "Pigs out! Lurvy! Pigs out! Homer! Lurvy! Pigs out! He's down there under that apple tree." "Now the trouble starts," thought Wilbur. "Now I'll catch it." The goose heard the racket, and she, too, started hollering. "Run, run, run downhill! Make for the woods! Make for the woods!" she shouted to Wilbur. "They'll never, never, never catch you in the woods." The Cocker Spaniel heard the commotion, and he ran out from the barn to join the chase. Mr. Zuckerman heard, and he came out from the machine shed where he was mending a tool. Lurvy, the hired man, heard the noise and came up from the asparagus patch where he was pulling weeds. Everybody walked toward Wilbur, and Wilbur didn't know what to do. The woods seemed a long way off, and anyway, he had never been down there in the woods and wasn't sure that he would even like it. "Get around behind him, Lurvy," said Mr. Zuckerman, "and drive him toward the barn. And take it easy, don't rush him. I'll go and get a bucket of slops." The news of Wilbur's escape spread rapidly among the animals in the place. Whenever any creature broke loose on Zuckerman's farm, the event was of great interest to others. The goose shouted to the nearest cow that Wilbur was free, and soon all the cows knew. Then one of the cows told one of the sheep, and soon all the sheep knew. The horses in their stalls in the barn pricked up their ears when they heard that the goose was hollering, and soon the horses caught on to what was happening. "Wilbur's out," they said. Every animal stirred and lifted its head and became excited to know that one of his friends had gotten free and was no longer penned up or tied fast. Wilbur didn't know what to do or which way to run. It seemed as though everybody was after him. "If this is what it's like to be free," he thought, "I believe I'd rather be penned up in my own yard." The Cocker Spaniel was sneaking up on him from one side. Lurvy, the hired man, was sneaking up on him from the other side. Mrs. Zuckerman stood ready to head him off if he started for the garden, and now Mr. Zuckerman coming down toward him carrying a pail. "This is really awful," thought Wilbur. "Why doesn't Fern come?" He began to cry. The goose took command and began to give orders. "Don't just stand there, Wilbur! Dodge about!" cried the goose. "Skip around! Run toward me! Slip in and out, in and out, in and out! Make for the woods! Twist and turn!" The Cocker Spaniel sprang for Wilbur's hind leg. Wilbur jumped and ran. Lurvy reached out and grabbed. Mrs. Zuckerman screamed at Lurvy. The goose cheered for Wilbur. Wilbur dodged between Lurvy's legs. Lurvy missed Wilbur and grabbed the spaniel instead. Nicely done, cried the goose. Try it again. "Run downhill," suggested the cows. "Run toward me," yelled the gander. "Run uphill," cried the sheep. "Twist and turn," honked the goose. "Jump and dance," said the rooster. So there's all the people trying to catch Wilbur. How do you think Wilbur feels right now with everybody coming after him? Do you think he feels a little bit worried? Maybe even a little bit scared? "Look out for Lurvy," called the cows. "Look out for Zuckerman," yelled the gander. "Watch out for the dog," cried the sheep. Listen to me, screamed the goose. Poor Wilbur was dazed and frightened by all this hullabaloo. He didn't like being the center of all this fuss. He tried to follow the instructions his friends were giving him, but he couldn't run downhill and uphill at the same time, and he couldn't turn and twist when he was jumping and dancing, and he was crying so hard he could barely see anything that was happening. After all, Wilbur was a very young pig, not much more than a baby, really. He wished Fern were there to take care of him. He wished Fern were there to take him in her arms and comfort him. When he looked up and saw Mr. Zuckerman standing quite close to him, holding a pail of warm slops, he felt relieved. He lifted his nose and sniffed. The smell was delicious. Warm milk, potato skins, wheat middlings, Kellogg's corn flakes, and a popover left from Zuckerman's breakfast. "Come, pig," said Mr. Zuckerman, tapping the pail. "Come, pig." Wilbur took a step toward the pail. No, said the goose. "It's the old pail trick, Wilbur. Don't fall for it. He's trying to lure you back into captivity. He's appealing to your stomach." Wilbur didn't care. The food smelled appetizing. He took another step toward the pail. "Pig, pig," said Mr. Zuckerman in a kind voice, and he began walking slowly toward the barnyard, looking all about him innocently, as if he didn't know that a little white pig was following along behind him. "You'll be sorry, sorry, sorry," called the goose. Wilbur didn't care. He kept walking toward the pail of slops. "You'll miss your freedom," honked the goose. "An hour of freedom is worth a barrel of slops." Wilbur didn't care. When Mr. Zuckerman reached the pig pen, he climbed over the fence and poured the slops into the trough. Then he pulled the loose board away from the fence so that there was a wide enough hole for Wilbur to walk through. "Reconsider, reconsider," cried the goose. Wilbur paid no attention. He stepped through the fence in the yard. He walked to the trough and took a long drink of slops, sucking in the milk hungrily and chewing the popover. It was good to be home again. While Wilbur ate, Lurvy fetched a hammer and some 8 penny nails and nailed the board back in place. Then he and Mr. Zuckerman leaned lazily on the fence, and Mr. Zuckerman scratched Wilbur's back with his stick. "He's quite a pig," said Lurvy. "Yes, he'll make a good pig," said Mr. Zuckerman. Wilbur heard the words of praise. He felt the warm milk inside his stomach. He felt the pleasant rubbing of the stick along his itchy back. He felt peaceful and happy and sleepy. This had been a tiring afternoon. It was still only about 4 o'clock, but Wilbur was ready for bed. "I'm really too young to go out into the world alone," he thought as he lay down. And that's the end of chapter 3. So I asked you to infer, what did you think was going to happen? Did you make a smart prediction? Did you guess that was going to happen? Let's see what I wrote. I infer that Wilbur will escape and return to Fern's house and barn. I thought Wilbur was going to escape Uncle Homer's barn and farm because he missed Fern and he was going to run back to the place where he was born. Now, did that really happen? No. So I need to change my thinking now. That was a good guess, and part of it was right. He did escape a little bit, but it was more on accident because the goose told him that there was a loose board in the fence. But all he did was run around outside Uncle Homer's farm and in his yard, and then everybody lured him back into his pen. All right, next time we read, we're going to read chapter 4, and it's called Loneliness. There's another good chapter where you can infer, why do you think it's called loneliness? Is Wilbur going to be lonely? I'll see you next time.